So in my last video, I showed you how to draw rotations when you're rotating around the origin on the coordinate grid. Today, we're going to be doing some harder rotations. For example, on this one, draw the image after a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation about point A. So notice, everything seems similar to last time's situation, except this time we're rotating around point A, not the origin. So first off, what does it look like? Well, I have a transparency to kind of show you. See, we're rotating around point A, so you have to imagine point A is like the center of the universe for this figure. And we're going to rotate this figure around that point, and so it's going to end up looking like that. Alright, so all we're doing is we're spinning it around point A instead of spinning it around the origin, which is a little confusing for most kids because we're used to having the axes, and we base everything when we rotate around the axes. This time, if we're rotating around point A, there are no axes at point A. So, I have a tip for you. And my tip for you is, since it's so easy to rotate around the origin with the axes, why don't we imagine at point A that point A is the origin, and then there are axes going through point A. In fact, to help, I'm just going to draw in these axes. Pretend this is the y-axis, and pretend this is the x-axis. And imagine point A as the origin. Alright? Because now, this problem is very similar to the rotations we've done before, where we're rotating around the origin. Alright? So let's do that. So notice, point B is on the y-axis, and we're rotating counterclockwise, so that's this way. So that means point B is going to end up on the x-axis when it rotates 90 degrees. And since it's 4 steps away from the fake origin, it's going to remain 4 steps away from the fake origin, just on a different axis. So this is going to be my B prime. Now notice, point A is on our fake origin. When we rotate it, it's not going anywhere. That's the one point that doesn't move at all. So point A stays there, and that's also going to be my A prime. Okay? Now, point C is going to be the hard one, because notice point C is kind of in this quadrant over here. When we rotate it, it's going to be somewhere in this quadrant over here. But where exactly will it be? Well, to get to point C, I would have to go along the fake x-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'd go into the quadrant 1, 2, 3 steps. Okay, so 6 along the fake x-axis, and then 3 steps into the quadrant. When I rotate, I'm not going to go across the x-axis anymore. I'm going to go along the y-axis for 6 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'm going to cut into the quadrant 3 steps. Now I already know point C is going to rotate into this quadrant over here, so I know I'm going to take 3 steps into this quadrant over here. Right there, that is my point C prime. Alright? But you see how we have to do that? We're using our axes, well, our fake axes, to kind of find a path to get to C, and then we're using that same path, but rotating it. So now instead of going along the x-axis and cutting in, we're going to go along the y-axis and cut in. And that's how we find C prime. And once we connect these up, we should have our rotated triangle around point A. Alright? So there it is. And if we want to double check, let's see. Here is my transparency, rotating it around point A, and notice, it lands perfectly on our new rotated triangle. Okay? So the trick here is we know how to rotate around the origin when we have the axes. So if we're rotating around a different point, just either imagine that that point is the origin or actually draw it in and make it the origin. All right, let's do one more example so we can make sure we understand this. Draw the image after a 90 degrees clockwise rotation about point F. So notice, this time we're going clockwise. So we're going this way this time. All right? And we're rotating around point F. That's that point right there. Okay, so let's do this. So again, we're not rotating around the origin, but we can imagine F is the origin. So through F, I'm just going to draw myself some fake axes to use as my guide for rotating around. All right, so there's my fake axes. Now the easiest point to rotate is going to be any point on the axes, and of course F is already on the axes. It's on both axes. And since we're rotating around F, we know F prime is also going to be on this point because F isn't going to move. All right, now let's find the other ones. And notice, there are no other points on this triangle on the axes, so the other two are going to be a little bit harder. But notice, they're both in this quadrant right here. So when they rotate, they're going to end up in this quadrant over here. Let's do E first, since it's closest. To get to E, I would have to go one along the fake axis, and then into the quadrant, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps. So one along the x-axis and into the quadrant 6 steps. When I rotate, I'm not going to go along the x-axis anymore. I'm going to go along the y-axis for 1 step. And then cut into the quadrant 6 steps. Well, I know E is going to be in this quadrant, so I'm going to cut into this quadrant by 6 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right there. There's my E prime. All right. Let's do it one more time for D now. For D, I would, starting in the origin, I'm going to go along the fake x-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. And then I'm going to cut into the quadrant, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. So 5 along the x-axis and 5 into the quadrant. When I rotate, again, I'm not going to go along the x-axis. I'm going to go along the y-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. And then I'm going to cut into the quadrant by 5 steps. But we know we've rotated D over into this quadrant, so we're going to cut into this quadrant over here by 5 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is my D prime. All right. So when I connect these up, this should be my rotated triangle around point F. And if I want to double check, I can because I made a little transparency here. So I've got this triangle rotating around point F. I'll put my pencil on F, and when I spin it, notice it lands perfectly onto my other triangle right there. All right. So again, the key to rotating around random points is to almost imagine that those random points are the origin. Okay? Or if you have a tough time imagining the origin, make them the origin. Draw in some fake axes so you can rotate around them. All right? So hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please hit that like button. Also subscribe because it really helps us out. But with that being said, good luck on your math, and I will see you next time.